And we are live. Park Right Here podcast.
Well, hello,
Well, Tom,
everyone. First, I have to apologize. I've had some technical difficulties. That's why we're getting on so late. For some reason, I keep getting frozen, but so we're trying this a different way. I got a different laptop. So here goes. Katrina, it's all you.
hello everyone. This is the Park Right Here podcast with Tom and Katrina. How is everyone today? I'm a little dyskinetic, so I actually went to the doctor this week to Charlottesville and had my deep brain stimulator kind of adjusted. So this is my iPod, and you're gonna watch me. They gave me two programs. I have a main program and a dyskinetic program, and so I'm gonna switch to my dyskinetic program, which where it reduces the stimulation of my electrodes in my brain. So
Mm,
if I reduce the stimulation, then the dyskinesia should subside quite a bit. So we'll see how it works. So I hope everybody had a great week. I had a busy one, I have to say. It was a very, very busy week, and it's gonna get busier. A lot of trips to Charlottesville. I had to have an steroid epidural yesterday, and I have a wedding this weekend with hubby's
mm.
family, and it's a cocktail attire. Ugh. And also, if you hear any noise in the background, that will be my friend Rhonda, who is over here cleaning my house for me. She is amazing and wonderful, and I could not live without her.
Ooh,
Like Tom says, you have those things that you can control and the things you can't control. And when you have your list of the things you cannot control anymore, you try to source them out. And
absolutely.
one of the things I have a hard time with, because I had a fusion before Parkinson's and I have a lot of pain in my lower back, is mopping the floors, doing dishes in the dishwasher, that kind of thing, and laundry. So Rhonda helps fill that gap. So um and and then I'm going to a Davis Finney event um at a new place called Park, which is the Parkinson's Activities and Recreation Center in Charlottesville. It's like a community center just for Parkinson's and their caregivers, exercise classes, community meetings, support group, that kind of thing. It's I would love to get one out here, but that's kind of jumping. Let's at least get a support group, and you know that's that's like an ultimate goal. But um, so how about you? How was your week?
Well, we actually, one second, I got to plug in. Again, this is the beauty of going live. We can't hide anything. So my week was pretty good. We had, contrary to what the weather is like now, we were in the mid 70s this weekend, and one of the local communities had a big parade. It was meant because we live in a kind of a tourist area, and the parade was meant to bring people into the area one last weekend. It was kind of a cool Halloween parade, and I got to walk around for a couple 3 miles. I had got my little steps going, and so it was nice.
How's the weather out there? I
Right
know the
now,
weather out here.
we're about 50-ish right now. The weather changed quite dramatically over the last day or so, but I guess we were just spoiled a little bit by the warm weather at the end of October. But November's come back and sort of slapped us in the face, and we don't like that.
Yeah, we had a freeze warning the other day. It was awful, awful. It's like we got winter. Pew! Like it went from 70 to 20. It was redonkulous.
Wow.
I felt like I was in Colorado all over again.
Hmm.
Because Colorado was like, that was the most bipolar weather I've ever been in. Okay,
Hmm.
this is my iPod. I have an Abbott um, generator system where the electrodes go. I've got Jim calls them, my husband calls them my devil horns. and then the wires go under the skin behind my ears. You can feel a little bit of the suture line and see a little bit of it on my neck. And then I have 2 generators, so it's 2 completely separate systems. And I don't know if you can see it very well.
Tilt it a little bit to the left or right on an angle. Well, that's a little bit better.
Yeah, it's there.
There you go. That's better.
Okay, this is my left brain, which controls the right side of my body, which is more symptoms on the right side of my body. And it's to 150, whatever that means.
So what's very interesting is that I've been diagnosed 8 years ago. Katrina, how many years ago were you diagnosed?
12.
12. Yet the symptoms are so vastly different between myself and Katrina. I give her so much credit for allowing herself to come out and be seen in this, not in this condition, because it's not really a condition, but to show you how Parkinson's affects her. And for me, I have mostly muscle fatigue, rigidity, and stiffness, which is kind of a hidden thing, so to speak. I don't have any tremors to speak of. The medication does a good job with the tremors. And I don't have any of the dyskinesia or dystonia. Not yet. I hope I never get them, but I don't have them currently. And this is, to me, the most frustrating thing about Parkinson's is if you can put 100 of us in the room together, we're going to have 100 different drug regimens. We're going to probably have 100 different types of symptoms. No one's the same. And I think that's what makes the research on how to find a cure so vastly difficult, because it's not like one size fits all. It's so many different, it could be environmental, it could be genetics.
Mm-hmm.
I've had my DNA checked for 2 separate occasions, and I don't have any DNA markers for Parkinson's, which I'm very fortunate for. So that probably means mine was maybe environmental. And it's, you scratch your head, because I look at where I grew up and no one in the neighborhood had Parkinson's. I kind of, looking at where I was in my life, I don't see a place where environmental would make that much of a difference. But at this point,
I was going to say, we do have a question
about
medication. It says, when you can, how do you dose between Rytary and Inbrija? Now, I can answer that because I'm on both. Rytary is the carbidopa, levodopa. It's the long acting, and the short acting actually are in Rytary. It's a capsule that is, because I have gastroparesis thanks to Parkinson's, which in a nutshell is just slow digestion. I actually had to have a, nuclear study to test for the gastroparesis. I had to eat radioactive eggs and dry toast, and they took a picture at a half hour, 2 hours, and 4 hours after I ate the eggs. And at the end, I was supposed to be close to 100% digested. I think I was like at 65. So Rytary works better for me because of the capsule and just the slow absorption.
It's more of a time release capsule.
Yeah, time release. And also, one thing you have to be careful of with levodopa is protein, because protein affects the absorption of levodopa. And so with Rytary, I would not take Inbrija an hour before or within 2 hours after, because I found out the hard way, if you take them too close together, I had, for the first time in my life, because I really honestly thought hallucinations were kind of fake, so to say. Like I said, I would know reality. I didn't believe that they would be really true. But I had the worst hallucinations ever. Visual, auditory, tactile, whole 9 yards. So if you have dystonia, which is why I take Inbrija, I would take your Inbrija And if it's time to take your Rytari, I would take the Ambrosia instead, because the Ambrosia is going to kick in 10 minutes because it's inhaler and it's inhaled levodopa. And take that, and then an hour later, then take your Rytari. That would be my suggestion. But as me and Tom always say, we're not healthcare professionals. Always talk to your doctor before changing any medication regimen. But from my experience and my knowledge of my own body and my own experience with Ambrosia, I've been on Ambrosia since when they were giving out samples. The reps were giving out samples as soon before it came out on the market. So
as an example, my medications are different than hers. I take they like to call it the gold standard, the carbidopa levodopa in the form of Cinemet. That's the gold standard. It's been the gold standard for about 60 years now, so I'm kind of hoping we can find a new standard at some point. And I take something called a tapopone that goes together with the carbidopa levodopa. It helps the brain absorb it better, if that's the right word, and not have those nasty little enzymes in your head kind of going after the levodopa. And then I take a dopamine agonist, and I also take something called Artang for the tremors. But for me, I'm very, very fortunate in that my tremors start about 3.5 hours into I take my meds in the morning. About 3.5 hours later, I can start feeling the tremors coming. I try to stay on a 4-hour increment, but that's after 8 years. This is, again, the vast difference between her and myself, and for myself with anybody else, is there's such a vast difference in the level of how the disease affects you. I've decided that I've also learned that I'm gaining more what I call foot in the mouth disease. I just can't seem to get the words. The words are in my head, but I can't seem to get them out of my mouth at times. It's just that connection is kind of missing. And that's one of the ways that the lack of dopamine interferes with the brain's activities. But I do know those two drugs, and I think Katrina gave a really good overview. I once talked to my doctor about Rytari, and it's not as simple as a 1-for-1 exchange. He said at this point he didn't feel like Rytari was right for me. So we kind of had like a little agreement that I take 1.5 tablets of Cinemet every 4 hours. If I'm feeling like I need a little extra dopamine for whatever reason, I'll take a half a dose now and then. He's not concerned about the taking a half a dose every day or so. But I only use that if I want to be, if I got something like I'm going to say important to do and I don't want the tremors bother me, I'll take maybe 1/2 a dose 45 minutes before, just to give myself a little extra dopamine.
Okay. We also have another question. This is from my cousin, Stacy.
Hey, Stacy.
What coping mechanisms help you with your daily routine?
Alcohol. No. No.
I know Tom would probably say laughter, seeing, I don't know if jokes is not the right word.
No. I don't do jokes. I do humor. Difference.
Humor. Yeah, that's the word. Seeing the humor in everyday things.
And that's helped, to a certain extent, that helps keep me sane. I'm a very logically thinking person. I studied economics. I like the way things work. I like processes. So the way I try to manage things is I try to control them, if that makes sense. Once I know something, once I have an understanding of what's happening to me, then I can sort of like understand it, and I can sort of absorb it and then work it into my schedule of what I need to do. It's like for me, it's more of a process. Once I can understand what it is and I can process it, I can then manage it. The things that I cannot manage are those things I can't seem to control. And that to me gets a little bit frustrating because I'm also sort of a type A person. And as Katrina said, for me, I don't do jokes. I do humor because I see things differently than I think most people. I make connections. My head is like a hard drive. It's spinning and there's little bits of data in there. And at some point I hear something that then I connect the two bits of data together. and I can see the humorous aspect of it. I can remember things that happened like 30, 40, 50 years ago, but I can't remember what I did this morning. At the end of the day, it's like, what the hell did I do? But I know what I did in 6th grade. It's so frustrating at times how it affects the short-term memory.
Yeah, I honestly, being a nurse for almost 20 years, I was so ready for the motor symptoms, the physical stuff that you can see. I thought it was all tremors and shuffling of your feet and that hunched over and that voice, that Parkinson's voice, like Davis Finney has. And that's all I thought it was. But no, from the beginning, well, once your physical symptoms start, you have lost 70 to 80% of all the dopamine that you're ever going to have. But 10 to 20 years before that happens, mental health stuff can start to happen. You could go through severe depression episodes. You can be diagnosed with anxiety disorders. You can be diagnosed with bipolar. All of that stuff starts way before the physical stuff. And so, of course, that happened to me. And I just was not ready for the cognitive stuff because I was used to multitasking, I could memorize everything. And I was in school to get my master's degree in nursing. And I was forgetting the names of bones and stuff to me that was simple. I went from A's in my lab to F's like that. And it was just because, like you said, it's called word finding. It's like when you know that the word is right here, but it will not come out of your mouth.
Right.
It's so frustrating when you're a talky person, which we all know Tom is by now, and I am as well, and Stacy is too. I can vouch for that one. Even as kids, but it's even just growing up, and I always talked and talked and talked, and it's just frustrating to have that block now. So I think the non-motors are the worst for me anyway.
There are people who are waiting for my voice to get lower because I have a loud voice. For those people who are aware of the Big and Loud program, I like to say I was born big and loud. So I've got that one ace. But that's my biggest coping mechanism is trying to understand what's happening and sort of, I want to say at a molecular level. So how is this impacting my life? How can I control it? How can I not control it? What do I need to do if I have to physically control it? And then once I process all of that, it just becomes part of my daily life. And, I've gotten to the point where I put so much faith in my doctors and all the people that I'm associated with in the Parkinson's world, because at some point you got to believe. And I'm probably a good patient to my neurologist because, I like to tell him I was an expert in distribution when I was working, and he's an expert in Parkinson's. And, so I'm going to yield to him as to what he believes. We have a good conversation. We talk about what it is. And then at the end of the day, I yield to his opinion. And I find that makes my life once I learn that I can trust somebody and then put that faith in them, it helps me manage the conditions. So when I talked to him about taking retiree, he went through the list of why he didn't think it was ready I was ready for it. And then I just thanked him, and then it was put on the back burner. Maybe a couple, 3 years from now, I'll look at taking retiree, but I only do it at his advice. And that kind of leads into another thing. I'm fortunate. I have a great movement disorder specialist. I've been with him for about 7 years now. And one of the biggest things that I try to tell people, I know that I love this expression because I use it a lot. It's easier said than done, but try to find yourself a great neurologist, someone that you can talk to, someone that will see you as a person and not as a clinical, now serving number 3. I really enjoy the relationship I have with him, and I feel fortunate in that respect. And I just had a meeting with him last month, and I drive 120 some miles to see him, which is because I was living in the Baltimore area, then we moved out to Delaware. But for me to see a movement disorder specialist in Delaware, I'm in the lower section. I got to go up north towards Jersey. And that's like 120 miles versus 125 miles. And I know one person who's an ambassador with us, she's in Alaska, and she has to fly to her doctor because there's no neurologist that she can work with in Alaska. So that's, I guess, the biggest reason you want to find someone that you can really trust, because they're so far and few in between.
I have a funny for you. She said, for you, Tom, if that helped Parkinson's, I'd get Katrina drunk a few times a week.
There you go. So we're talking about quinine and how it helps people sleep. And the guy in the support group said, well, what do you add to it to help you sleep? Of course, my response was gin.
And also, somebody's asking about domperidone. Is that another agonist?
I'm afraid that doesn't ring a bell to me.
Okay. Or, let's see.
How do you spell it?
Well, this is another medication he asked about. OPICAPONE.
Well, 1 second. I'm just going to look. Give me a second. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
OPICAPONE. And I'm going to post this in the
comments. Oh, yeah, I recognize that now. Well, it is a, what can we say? How is it?
If you're looking up anything for Parkinson's, and Tom can tell you his story about it when he was first diagnosed, but the trusted ones to look for would be like the Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, Michael J. Fox Foundation, Davis Finney Foundation, which Tom and I are both ambassadors for. They're out of Colorado. Definitely, they have an amazing book resource. Go ahead.
I take something similar to what he was saying. I take a tapapone, which is a CO, it's an inhibitor. And what those inhibitors do is there are enzymes in the brain that sort of attack the dopamine, and they kind of help with the body's absorption of the dopamine by sort of blocking those enzymes. So instead of having to take more dopamine, you can take something like the CMOT, or there's also called MAOs, that work differently to help your body or your brain absorb more the levodopa.
Yep. And all carbidopa is a medication, so your body won't reject levodopa.
Yeah, it's like a buffered coating of it, like buffering. It's like a coating in the sense to help your body better absorb it without getting sick.
Yep. So you don't throw it up.
But her point was, I do a lot of research as well, but I try to look at sites such as the Cleveland Clinic, the Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins, University of Florida. You know, I try to go to sources that I can. NIH is a big one.
Yeah.
You know, when I was first diagnosed, I saw the big thing when I was first diagnosed on putting coconut oil on your head that would help cure Parkinson's. I almost bought a gallon of coconut oil just to give it a try, but you know, when you read something that's from Joe's House of Parkinson's, you probably don't want to follow his advice.
Yeah. And I even noticed this week when I was putting the podcast on different sites, a couple times we got scammed by, you know, oh, doctor, this person has the cure for Parkinson's, these essential oils or whatever. And I'm like, I reported them for false health news or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's everywhere. And
right.
That's one of my pet peeves. There are herbs and plants that do have levodopa, but you cannot
There's so small of an amount, you can't eat enough of those herbs.
And plus you can't regulate how much you're taking. I mean, how do you adjust, and how do you know how much is in there?
Right. You know, that's an interesting point, because I did talk to my doctor once about medical marijuana. And being that we've had a long relationship, he said, Tom, I honestly, at this point, the research isn't there for me to make I guess, into a defined answer for you. We just don't know how it impacts. There's over like 100 different chemical compounds in it, and we just don't know at this point. And he goes, honestly, he goes, I would not recommend that he would not recommend that for me. And that's the relationship I have. And I said, okay, it's off the table. But it's just some people say it helps. Some people, it's just, there's so much out there. I like to call it, there's so much noise. And the difficult thing is trying to get through all that noise to find out what's really going to help and what's not going to help.
Yeah, we do definitely recommend Davis Finney's book, Every Victory Counts. You can either download it for free, the ebook, or there's a physical book that they will send you.
Which weighs about 25 pounds. No, it's a big book. It's a heavy book. The digital download I like because I like the fact that I can do a Control F search. I can, pull it down as a PDF, and then I can do a search for specific keywords. Like if I wanted to look up a dopamine agonist, I can just type in the word agonist, and it would take me to the first mention of the word agonist in the book, and it helps me define or narrow down what I'm trying to find. But it's a great resource. We like to call it the Bible. Everything you need to know about Parkinson's is in there.
Okay. Let's see. Adon is asking, is it for gut paralyzed?
I'm sorry?
Is one of those medications for like a paralyzed gut?
Not to my knowledge. I haven't ever heard anyone say any connection between Parkinson's and a paralyzed neck.
No, a gut, like stomach, like.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because I have gastroparesis.
Okay, you're going to laugh at this, Katrina, but I'm trying to read your lips. I'm having trouble understanding. See, this is the fun give and take that you get with the two of us.
No, I've never heard of paralyzed gut with Parkinson's. Have you?
Gut, yeah, neither have I. Well, I do know that the dopamine, some people are constipated because the muscles used to constrict, I guess, the bowels to push them out just aren't there with the lack of dopamine. Because dopamine is what they call a neurotransmitter. It's like the way the brain communicates with various parts of your muscles and such. And when those neurotransmitters don't have enough impact, if you will, or not enough of them, that affects the way your body reacts.
Oh, okay. He's talking about the domperidone.
Okay.
Does that paralyze the gut?
I'm gonna have to pass on that.
Yeah, I'll have to do some research on that one. Yeah. THC, I have seen it work with my second cousin who has more stereotypical tremors. Now, I'm non-tremor Parkinson's, so I can't speak to that. I have tried it for pain relief and stuff, and it just doesn't work for me. So I can't really speak to that. It is legal in Virginia, and my husband uses it for PTSD. So.
Well, I can say the last time I used it for clinical purposes was in the 70s.
Did it work?
Yeah, for that clinical study, yes, I must admit it did work.
Oh, okay. Somebody else mentioned that they had the gastroparesis as well. Yeah, it's like the dysphagia when you have trouble swallowing. Everything just slows down. That's your muscles slow down in around your esophagus and around your throat, and that's what makes you sound like a frog, or you start sound all gravelly. My voice gets very low and very quiet at times, which my husband doesn't mind at all because I get very quiet. But speech therapy helps with that, and like Tom was saying earlier, where you need a really good neurologist, you need a whole care team. And it's not just your neurologist or your care partner, which could be spouse, children, friends, coworkers. You also need speech therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy.
Mm-hmm.
You also have the spiritual, you have the mental health aspect, considering depression and anxiety are the top two non motor symptoms for all Parkinson's patients. I know they said, I think the stat is 70 to 80% of all Parkinson's patients get depression and anxiety. I don't know about you, but I know depression and anxiety hit me around diagnosis time. I mean, and I was relieved to finally get a diagnosis and to say, okay, at least now I can educate myself. I know what I'm fighting. I know what
Mm-hmm.
to do. And because I remember, because it had been a while and we kept getting misdiagnosed, I actually had a neurologist specialist tell me I was faking to get attention.
Did it work?
And no,
Okay.
no. But I drove back up to Pennsylvania after I got my diagnosis and got her fired.
Oh, good.
So, oh yeah, I don't. Yeah, like I did with
Well,
my.
there's
I think I said talked about it last week with my primary care. This was my primary care doctor, who was a civilian working in a military hospital, and told me when I asked for a referral for a movement disorder specialist, he said, "Oh, you don't need one of those. A regular neurologist is fine." And then I asked for pain management so I could get shots in my back, and he said, "Nah, you don't need that. That's just a crutch. You need to do Pilates and planks because
well,
at
can I
that,
see
at
you
that
do a plank right now?
no, I couldn't do them
Okay.
when I was 6. I couldn't do them when I was 16, and I was on a dance team in high school.
Hey.
It's
Well, yeah, I
like
probably would
ridiculous.
guess that 50%, and it's just the number is just a guess, but it wouldn't surprise me if over 50% of people diagnosed with Parkinson's had the misdiagnosing in the first place. Like I was diagnosed as having essential tremor and a pinched nerve,
Mhm.
which one of the questions was, how does that happen at the same time? I mean, what did I do to have and they couldn't give me that answer. It took me like 3 or 4 months to someone actually said, yes, you have Parkinson's.
And the cognitive stuff just, it 2 and 2 did not equal 4,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I knew something was wrong because of the cognitive stuff. And the carpal tunnel. I got carpal tunnel in both of my hands, Michelle. I was just recently diagnosed with that. Um, and I have to. Luckily, they have a hand specialist an hour away. I don't have to go to Charlottesville for that. I can go to Johnson City, Tennessee, for that one. Um, and last week, I've been in touch with our fan from last week, and she knew my third cousin.
Yeah,
And I
they're from,
told,
you got to say they're from West Virginia. So the third cousin could be the neighbor.
yeah. Well, actually, it's Southwest Virginia. I say I'm in
Okay.
the armpit of West Virginia, the little skinny part of Virginia. But like an hour north is West Virginia, hour south is Tennessee, and an hour west is Kentucky. So, and I is a hillbilly. Yes.
I'm a city slicker.
Yeah, my cousin Stacy's actually from here, grew up here. Now she lives um outside of Atlanta. Let's see. Michelle
And that's,
says
I
she
love
was.
going off on tangents though, but when you look back at where you lived, I grew up outside Chicago and I went to visit my family. So I drove past the 2 or 3 different houses that we lived in. And I
Mhm.
can't imagine how we lived in those houses. They were so tiny. It's just really
Oh, I
kind of
know.
unusual. It's like they
I
say you can
know.
never go back home. But, talking about, different areas, like, because I knew nobody until I was diagnosed, I knew nobody with Parkinson's.
Mhm.
Uh, and like I found that surprising because now like my next door neighbor has Parkinson's. He's moved. Of course, he moved in about a year ago. I've been here 3 years. He blames it on me that I gave him Parkinson's, but that's just done in jest. But I've got like 4 or 5 people in the community I live in, which is not an over 55 community, but it's basically most people here are retirees or getting close to being retired. There's like 5 people in this area that have Parkinson's, which I find very interesting because, I said growing up, I knew nobody. Going back home, talking to my neighbors and such, they knew nobody with Parkinson's. And it's just so, it's just like, you don't know how you get it. That's the frustrating part. And I think we all suffer from that frustration.
I know that the Michael J. Fox Foundation has found that biomarker.
Yes.
And right now they can only get it through spinal fluid. So they're working on trying to get to it through just like blood work.
Yeah, I just recently did something with Johns Hopkins, and they asked me if I wanted to do that spinal tap. And I previously checked with my regular doctor, and he said, my movement disorder specialist. He said, I've had some back surgeries a couple times. So he goes, with your back, I wouldn't do it.
Okay. Adon was, could you cover your supplement regimen, what you take for supplements?
Alcohol. No. Recently at the University of Maryland, they do their annual symposium every year. And the symposium, one of the speakers there he was in the same group as my neurologist. The issue of supplements came up, and his perspective was he doesn't think supplements do enough to warrant taking them. If you eat a healthy diet, like I'm trying to do the Mediterranean diet, if you eat a healthy, well-balanced diet, the need for supplements really aren't there. So he can't recommend, he says, I don't really recommend supplements because I don't really think they do a whole lot. And there's another thing, there's so many different supplements out there. How do you know which is the right one? How do you know which one is going to give you a clean recipe, if that's the correct terminology? But yeah, I just had a full blood test. I took 5 vials of blood out of my arm the other day for my physical. And I was in the norm range for everything. So my doctor also said that he didn't necessarily think I should take any supplements.
Now, it was kind of the opposite for me. I wasn't. Actually, all 3 of us were not. We're kind of in a valley in the mountains. I'm in the Appalachian Mountains of Virginia, and they call it Sun Valley. And the way the sun goes, we get very little actual sunlight. So all 3 of us were very low on our vitamin D. So we had to take that strong once a week vitamin D.
Oh, yeah.
And I was low on my iron. But that's probably because I'm in perimenopause or whatever you call it. And what was the other? Magnesium. Now, I think the magnesium does help, but that's the only one I've ever seen a difference. I have tried like Nariva, which is supposed to help with brain and all of that, but I never noticed. No, he said test yourself to see what makes you feel better or makes meds work better. And that's what I did with Nariva. Because I don't know if you know who Mayim Bialik is. She used to be on Blossom in the 90s and then the Big Bang Theory. But she has a PhD in neuroscience.
Yeah, I liked her on the sitcom.
Big Bang Theory?
Big Bang Theory.
Yeah. And I've listened to her podcast about mental health, and she has a lot of she's very, very smart. And so she was being sponsored by Nariva. So I didn't notice any adverse effects, but I didn't notice any positives either. Because, like I said, the cognitive stuff just gets me. And I would love to find a supplement that helps with that, with the word finding and the short-term memory. That would be all it for me. But the magnesium does helps my energy level and the vitamin D.
I'm going to slowly try to type in the name of the neurologist that talked about supplements. I think he has some information on YouTube as well.
Okay. And yeah, check out Maya Bialik, especially about mental health issues. She runs the gambit about depression, anxiety, everything. I would love to be on her podcast, but of course, that's a pipe dream.
That for what it came over, it should be R dot and then a space because sorry, the first letter is F. I typed the first letter is not R, it should be F.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's little finger issues with Parkinson's, fine motor skills.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Michelle says she was misdiagnosed at age 29. Yeah, that's because 1, you're a female, and 2, the age. Yeah. Yeah, when you're in your 20s, they're not looking for Parkinson's.
No, they're not. Let's see if he comes up on YouTube.
I was 42 and they weren't looking for Parkinson's. They kept looking at my cervical because I was having the slowness and the heaviness on my right side. I was having trouble with my handwriting. That it's called Micrographia. It's where I start with nice handwriting and it ends up to be this little tiny little sliver of almost nothingness.
Oh, wow.
Oops. How did I do that? I got us on full screen.
I'm looking for something as we're talking. This is one of my curse.
There is one supplement combo that has worked for me for almost 7 years. It's Costco Kirkland brand calcium zinc mag combo. I can see that working because the calcium. I'm not sure about what zinc does, but I definitely understand the magnesium.
So while we're talking, I Googled Parkinson's and supplements, and there's a lot of different sites you can visit. There are some like from the Davis Finney Foundation. There's some from the University of Florida, but just be careful the ones that you read.
Yeah, make sure they're always reliable sources. I did post on the comments some of the reliable sources.
Yeah, I saw that.
That me and Tom definitely support. If you can think of any others, Tom, feel free to post them.
Sure.
I'm gonna go
like I said earlier, there's like a handful. When I first got diagnosed, I was looking at everything, and I like to say there was so much noise out there. So you got to find something that works for you. For example, like I said, I look at the Cleveland Clinic. I like to look at the Mayo Clinic, University of Maryland, Johns Hopkins, and University of Florida, which has probably one of the leader. University of Florida has a hell of a program down there. But those are the 5 sites I like to go to. And when it comes to foundations, of course, I look at Davis Finney Foundation, Michael J. Fox Foundation, National Parkinson's Association, and APDA, American Parkinson's Disability Association. I believe but those are the ones that I like to look at because I know the information coming from them is going to be reasonable and it's going to be honest. It may not give you the answer you want, but at least it's going to be an honest response. I lost Katrina.
No, I'm just getting my my book.
No, the big book.
Yep, the Bible.
Here she comes. She's walking a little slow because that book weighs a ton.
I was also trying to look for my other book, my dummy book.
Why she's looking for her dummy book. When it comes to doctors, there's a thing about me that I always say you have to be an advocate for yourself. If you don't feel like your doctor is giving you enough time, you've got to have a conversation. I mean, there was one person I spoke to that says they get 10 or 15 minutes twice a year. And it's like, I said, well, that's not really an acceptable. She goes, well, I don't have any other doctor to go to. I said, well, there's other doctors. You just got to take a look. But ideally, you should have a conversation with your doctor and say, 15 minutes is not enough. I've got to have at least 30 minutes. And that's, once you get that good doctor, hopefully he will say, yes, I can find a way to give you 30 minutes. That should be the norm, not the exception.
Parkinson's disease for dummies.
There you go.
If you're newly diagnosed, this is about as simple as you can get.
That's my autobiography.
I mean, it actually is. It talks about depression more than just sad and blue, dealing with apathy. Because I was not prepared for the apathy or the mask-like face. My mom noticed that like years before. She thought it was like on too much Ativan or something, because I used to have a very emotive face, and now I'm, I call it resting Parkinson's face. And dealing with lack of motivation. Tell me about it. This is my favorite place in the whole house. My bed. And treatment plans. But this is Davis Finney. Every victory counts. This is actually, they've condensed this because now they have a separate one for caregivers, care partners. With Michael J. Fox Foundation is for research, medication, and finding a cure. So Davis Finney was a cyclist in the late 90s. I think the 80s and the 90s, because he was in the 84 Olympics in LA. And he won a bronze medal for cycling. And he was diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's in the late 90s, I believe. And he's had DBS. And he's still alive and kicking. And he decided he wanted to start a foundation that had taught people how to live well with Parkinson's today. And that's why I love the Davis Finney Foundation, because it teaches you so much about this very, very complicated disease. And it puts care partners up there with us Parkies. That's our nicknames for each other. And because care partners are just as important, whether it's a spouse or a friend or a child or whatever. And it's color coded. It's very easy to read. It's at a layman's terms. And it starts chapter 1. You have Parkinson's. Now what?
You're right.
And let's see. Let me look in my content. I haven't looked in this in so long. Chapter 2, Parkinson's 101. Chapter 3, motor symptoms. Chapter 4, non-motor symptoms, which are more emotional. Chapter 5, non-motor symptoms, cognitive. Then Chapter 6, non-motor symptoms, autonomic. And then you have Parkinson's treatments and therapies. You got medication, surgical therapies, exercise, which is almost as important as medication. You have complementary therapies, which it does talk about occupational, speech, physical therapy, and then it talks about nutrition, emotional health. There's a long part on emotional health, social connections, relationships, and community, general health and wellness, and long-term care and financial planning, and Parkinson's today and beyond.
So while she was doing that, I threw two things in the chat. One is the Khan Academy, which I really like. They have a khanacademy.org. They have a good series on almost everything. And then I put a link to our manual, park right here on Davis Finney /foundation/ Every Victory Counts. If you go to that link and you just click it, you can order a hard copy of the book, or you can get a download of the book as well.
Yeah. Somebody asked, is there a related audiobook? I don't believe so.
No, not to my knowledge.
We should ask editor Sarah about that, about getting an
Well,
audiobook
although
on
for a
audio.
small donation, I'll read a chapter to you every other day. It'd be your audio book.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, not so much awesome.
Because honestly, I used to be a voracious reader.
Mm-hmm.
Like I read all the time, and I cannot get through a book. I can't even get through a chapter anymore because of my attention span or lack thereof.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's just I can't do it anymore.
Well, if you want
And
to look at people with a short attention span, Google Malcolm in the Middle and light bulb. That was a TV show a while back. Malcolm in the Middle and the word light bulb. And that's our life right now as far as the inability to multitask.
yep, that's pretty much me in a nutshell. And I can't concentrate on doing two things at once anymore. I cannot multitask to save my life. Like if I'm doing something, it's like, and somebody asks me about something else, I'm like, forget it. I can't do it. It's like don't even try. Oh, and
I
one thing
found lately I use the apps on my phone like notes that I give myself messages because, like you said, it's hard to do two things at once. And if I feel like got a couple things, if I don't write them down in some context, I won't remember what they were.
I actually, what is it? I have an app. It's called Color Note. It is actually like little post-it notes,
Oh, okay.
and it's got everything. And you can lock it. You can lock each little note. I have my passwords in it.
Oh, cool.
I have my aunt's information because I take care of my two disabled elderly aunts who live the next county over. And another thing about this, it has people's stories in it, other people are going through.
Yeah, I really believe in the power of stories. If you have the opportunity to if someone has the opportunity to talk to you versus reading, it's so much easier to comprehend because you have that interaction going back and forth with stories. And I love stories. I don't think we tell enough of them anymore.
Yep. And that's what had me interested in doing the podcast in the first place. Because actually, this podcast started during the pandemic. Because so many people that were just diagnosed or, early on in the disease were scared. I mean, with COVID and the shutdowns and lockdowns and stuff. And there was so much misinformation going around at that time. And that's like you said, you have a really good relationship with your neurologist. I had a really good relationship with mine, and you need a good teaching doctor that's going to teach you what your disease is all about. You need to be well educated and be your own best advocate, and then pass that down and give it to other people in the community. I know Davis Finney is starting a kind of course class. I know it's has a waiting list already called PD Self.
Yeah, I'm on that.
About being, me too. About being your own best advocate, and it's actually going to be teaching people how to be their own best advocate. I think we're going to be facilitators of that, and also, if you don't have that good relationship with your neurologist, then find another one.
Yeah.
Even if you have to drive 4 hours, which I do.
Ooh.
Dr. D. He keeps trying to get me to call him by his first name, but the Southern girl in me can't do that, or the nurse in me can't do that.
Yeah, I think it'd be hard for me to refer to my doctor in person as Joe. He's Dr. Seth.
Yep. Even my primary care doctor is younger than me. He's the young Dr. McVey, because his father and his grandfather, my grandmother saw his grandfather, and he's very knowledgeable about Parkinson's. He knew about ambrosia, which for a small town doctor is a big, I was very impressed with, and I fell in love with them from the get go, and I actually had what is called, my husband taught me this. See, and you have to remind him that I gave him credit. It was called a Bible cyst. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
It's technically a ganglion cyst. I had it on my wrist, and what they used to do was take the family Bible, and it was big, and throw it down. Yep, and throw it down because it's like a fluid-filled cyst that comes and goes. But this was pretty big to where you could visibly see the bump. And
do you pop it first, or do you just put the Bible on it?
You just drop the Bible on it.
Okay.
And I even looked it up on Google, and that's what it was. That's what they used to do. And I showed it to Dr. McVey, and he injected it with steroids, and it went down. But
so I'm going to try to wrap it up a little bit. We've been on here for 56 minutes, and unfortunately, I've got someplace I need to go to. But we talk about advocacy. That's probably the biggest thing. If you take anything away from this podcast, it's being your own advocate. Don't accept the status quo. Without going into detail, I was having scheduled for back surgery. My doctor came in at noon and said we're going to have to reschedule because of something, and I simply told him that that's not going to happen. And 45 minutes later, we had the answer, and we were going into surgery. And when I looked at him and said, "I told you I was going to have surgery," I meant I was going to have surgery, because I think most people would say to their doctors, "Oh, okay, if we have to reschedule, let's reschedule." But I was there. I was ready for the back surgery. There's no way in hell I was going to let him reschedule that appointment. But you got to really find a way to advocate for yourself. And if you're concerned about how you'll be perceived, who cares? At the end of the day, if you're not getting what you need, you got to be that squeaky wheel. Yep. Mm-hmm. So, on that note, I think it's time again. Was it what was that TV movie? The Sound of Music. Well, Hello.
Goodbye.
So, again, if you don't know what this is and you're under 30 or 40, ask your mother. I'm so glad we had this time together. Right. Well, until next week, don't touch that bat phone. Don't change that bat dial. We'll see you next week.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
Gotcha.
Take care.